Thank you for being here. Let's just get right to it. The format tonight, I have Andy to talk on the school board referendum. Interestingly, no one from the city talked to us about their big multi-$100 million referendum. So I thought that was kind of odd, but. Then we're going to go through the various races. We have two races where we only have one candidate tonight, the U.S. House and Keys Energy. I'll explain those as we go. But our normal format, we'll bring the candidates up here after we introduce our panelists in a few minutes. We're going to try to do about 20 minutes a race, keep the answers to about a minute and a half, Sheldon, and that to try to get as many question and answers as we can. The candidates will not have opening statements, but they will have closing statements. And the one rule we instituted a few years ago that works pretty well is if a candidate mentions their opponent while they're speaking, we let the opponent respond. And if they mention the other candidate, then that one responds, and we'll go back and forth until they stop doing that. And it's worked out well. Last couple of years, we were starting to get, and I know it's shocking, but this is a bit of a hyper-partisan world we live in now. There's a lot of acrimony. At this event a few years ago, we had a lot of heckling, and it's not what we do. We're in a community, so no catcall. You can cheer for your candidate, but don't boo. I'll call you out, and I know most people here, and I mean it because it really ruins the event. The last event we had was fabulous. Everybody was on great behavior, and it makes it so much nicer. So. With that, I'll have Andy come up, talk about the school board referendum, then we'll introduce our panelists, and we'll get right to it. So, Andy, 30 minutes.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you again to Hometown for this opportunity. My name is Andy Griffiths. I am the Monroe County School Board representative from District 2 for 49 more days. I brought a copy of my ballot. I live in the county, not the city. The referendums are numbered 1 through 6, but after the referendums 1 through 6 is the schools issue. There are two issues. One is a half mil, a property tax for schools. The other is a half-cent sales tax for schools. It's very important to know the distinction between the two, because the reason our capital outlay property tax, another property tax, is so low is because it's held up by the half-penny sales tax. Now the tourist, and you can look this up, the tourists pay 65 to 70% of the sales tax collected in Monroe County. So the visitors are building our schools and our facilities. So thank you to them. We would like to keep doing that. What we did in 2004, some of you were here then, under Superintendent Paget. Who's here? Yeah, John, you can take a little credit for this. So 20 years ago, 2004, the state of Florida gave us an opportunity because our teachers were average pay in the state of Florida, here in Key West, Monroe County. Average pay. Of course, the rents were about a third back then. But they said, if you want to levy a millage of 1 mil, $1 of tax for every $1,000 of property, we'll let you do that in an election. So we didn't just go out for the mill. We thought that might be asking a little bit too much. We went out for half a mil, 50 cents of every $1,000 of property. But we were the only school district out of 67 that lowered the capital tax by the same amount. So essentially, not a tax increase, simply moving the money from the bricks and mortar fund to the people fund. And 20 years later, our teachers are top in the state in salary from beginning to end across the board. We know it's not enough. It's still not enough, but it's better than where we were 20 years ago. And so it's great for retention, it's great for recruitment. The Democratic Executive Committee and the Republican Executive Committee both voted unanimously to support this effort. I think that's probably I'm the only person to get up here and say that on anything tonight. But I think that speaks volumes about this initiative. I think it's crazy that it's up to the General Electric every 4 years because a half-cent sales tax is good for 10 years, but the millage tax is only good for 4. And because of scheduling and the elections, we have to have both on this ballot in a general election. And I'm quite afraid of that because I want to leave the school district in good shape. So I hope that everyone here will tell their friends. It's worth about $20,000 per teacher if it went away, just to give you an idea how much money we're talking about. So with that, I appreciate your attention and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Andy. We're going to do a minute and a half for answers. And we'll do it. Thank you, Andy. And Andy he just says his last term, Andy served what, 26 or 28, Andy?
I'm sorry, Tom?
How many years on the school board?
32.
I was way off. 32 years. People in this room that weren't born when he started. Not many people, it looks like. All right, let's get right to our event tonight. I want to have the panelists. We have a group of veteran panelists. Everybody has done this before. Kim, why don't you start off? Tell us introduce yourself and who are you with?
Okay. Hello. Hi, I'm Kim Works. I am the news director for Pirate Radio 1017 and 96.7, and I also represent Key TV, which is a tourist destination channel.
Hello, I'm Mandy Miles, one of 3 editors at the Keys Weekly. I'm the editor of the Key West Weekly down here in Key West. Been here 25, 26 years in Key West and am a non-party affiliated registered voter.
I'm Joe Moore, news director at US 1 Radio.
I'm Linda Cunningham, editor of Key West Island News and Key West Watch Media. I've been in town 12, 15 years, and I am a registered Democrat, so we're all good.
We're going to get right to it, and then we'll take little breaks as we have candidates coming up and back and forth. We have Phil Ayer. Phil is a candidate for U.S. House of Representatives, District 26. The incumbent is Carlos Gimenez. Carlos has been 26? Okay, sorry. 28. Thank you. Carlos has been at our events before. He has not been in contact with us this year, but we don't want to shortchange Phil, so we're going to give him 10 minutes to take questions from our panel, and then a minute and a half, 2-minute closing statement. So we're looking for 10 minutes. And Kim, why don't you start? And as we do this, Kim will be the first one. We'll run through the panel for the next race. Mandy will start, and we'll go so on and so forth. That way we try to keep changing it up, and I will try to keep track.
Okay, great. Hi, Phil. How you doing?
Hi, Kim.
I was not ready for you to be here, so just
I'm not ready for you either.
I was just reading some of your bio, and I see that you have a great deal of background in the military, and that you also worked in Cuba for a while. I would really like to know what your thoughts are on Cuba and how the United States should be involved in it.
Okay, well, thank you. I have actually never been to Cuba, the reference to Cuba is from my first mission as a 19-year-old sailor. I was privileged to be ordered to that mission that Mario boat left in 1980. And from that first experience as a young sailor, checking out the US Navy, what we ended up doing, rescuing people who risked it all for freedom and opportunity in the United States. And we repudiated that cruel regime. And the Carter administration, who turned 100 today, good for him. The Carter administration, who ordered it, loved that mission because they wouldn't have ordered it. They saw the humanitarian need, and they put the U.S. military to non-traditional use. And then later on, the Reagan administration liked it as well because we embraced a diverse group of Cuban people, again, who risked it all. Some were cast out of the jails, but a lot of them were, having a new life here. And all that was good, and that was just win-win-win for this young sailor to spend the next 25 years or 26 years on active duty serving our country. You asked about U.S.-Cuba policy. This is hugely important to the entire congressional district, who is about 70% Hispanic. And of those 70% Hispanic people, half of them are of Cuban origin tradition, and half of them from other traditions, other countries in mostly Central and South America. I was a panelist on a couple of Cuba-U.S. policy issues, so they can be researched from the journalists here if you want. but essentially we know some things are not working. We know that the total embargo is not working to the satisfaction of the Cuban diaspora here. We all want freedom in Cuba. The conditions of employment, the conditions of life, the conditions in prison by people who are expressing themselves is unacceptable, but yet we accept it. So this dichotomy of complaining about Cuba and really not wanting to do anything is where we're stuck. We are stuck as a nation on it. So I want to talk to my Bay of Pigs veteran friends, and I want to talk to the business people that are kind of always pressing for more business-to-business interaction, and recognize that Cuba is continuing to get weak. They are continuing also to economically, and they're continuing also to pose a threat. Pose a threat to us not in conventional military ways, but a threat to the strength and the example of the United States. So we actually do need to address it. Now, I don't want to bust any time here, but is there a sign when I'm going to get forward? 10 more minutes?
Oh, what, no?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think we want to get through a lot of
Let's
questions.
go to another question.
Yeah, let's do that.
Sorry, miscommunication. Let's still, 1.5 minute per
Yeah.
panelist.
I can go on and on, so I just want to say stop.
I was starting to do it in my head too. It's a long minute and a half. So,
I hope that's enough for a start for your question.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, how are you, Phil?
Well, thank you.
If successful in this election, you would be an incoming freshman Democratic congressman in DC. What would be your approach to bipartisanship, which has become a 4-letter word in DC right now, and in a lot of state capitals? So.
Yeah, the bipartisan approach comes down to what we just saw up here at the stage. We had the Republicans and Democrats in their executive committee, those politicos who look at policy in a very serious way, actually agree on something to do with public education. Love it. The more local we get, particularly here in the Keys, a little bit different than Miami-Dade, the more local we get, the more coming together as communities we have. That's what I've noticed. So I think that a focus on local is important. And I also know that it is disingenuous to think it's only going to be your local congressman. No, I am going to be engaged in the big controversial issues of the day. And I am a proud registered Democrat, the Democratic nominee, and I have been a Republican for 30 years prior to that. But more fundamentally, I've been a naval officer, and I know my time is up. I'm a naval officer who looks for practical solutions regardless of ideology. That's my approach. Get things done.
And do you have any connections personally or personal or professional relationships with existing Republicans?
Existing Republicans? Would
I mean,
you count?
in Congress, in
Who are
Washington,
serving
DC,
in Congress,
sorry.
existing Republicans serving in Congress? No, not that I can think of offhand. Same for Democrats? Well, actually I do. I've made some friends on Democrats.
Hey, Phil. I saw on your flyer in the lobby that one of the things you wanted to fix was the immigration issue. And obviously that's a big one. What would you do?
Okay, well, first I would recognize that you cannot get a rational immigration policy enacted without also dealing with border security. These things go hand in glove, and you got to do both. I would have, as distinct from my opponent, I would have voted for that bipartisan, conservatively oriented bill that came over from the Senate, but the House refused to pick up. I would have broken with my party to do so, because it is a step in the right direction. One of the reasons I'm running is to provide leadership and to move the country toward center. You don't move the country toward center if you're unwilling to compromise, to take incremental steps for things that matter to people. And immigration and border security actually matter to everybody.
Did you just wake up one morning and say, I think I'm going to run?
Yeah.
Okay, and how did that happen and why? I'll follow up, but...
Okay, good, thank you. So I'm a career naval officer, and most of my time was serving overseas, often in harm's way. However, when 2016 happened, I had already been retired for about 6 years. 2008 to 2016, that's more than 6 years, right? Okay, that's when I retired. And I was in London, England. When and I'd been registered as a Republican for 30 years. I was rooting for John Kasich at that time. He didn't get the nomination. I knew there was not in my home district, which is Florida's first congressional district up in the Panhandle, the opposite end of the state from here, that there was nobody in the Republican primary who had a critical word to say about Donald Trump in that election season. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. And those people included a flight school friend of mine. I went to his wedding. A wonderful Marine Corps officer. We're still really good friends apart from that. He was also in the January 6th incident. Also a son of the Chief of Naval Operations, also a retired Navy captain. So I cold called into the the county Democratic Party, switched parties, and was welcomed into that race. I was Matt Gaetz' opponent in 2020.
Thanks. Let's do do your follow-up. Okay. Got like a little lightning round for Phil. Quick, easy question.
Okay.
See, I can
You
go
guys
on.
usually don't obey when I ask for obey's the wrong word, I understand.
Okay, how do you think your military experience can help you in this position?
Oh, that's easy. Thank you. It's because I know how to solve problems. I know how to represent people. You don't stay in the United States Navy without getting things done, let alone advance the United States Navy. I'm a Navy Mustang, enlisted service, officer service, flew in the Navy, deployed down here for training out of NAS Key West. I served down here when I was working for one of the intelligence agencies to consult with the GIADFs out in Key West and other places. So I have a broad range of experience with the core of what is to be done here with military basing. I was involved in 2 rounds of actual moving military basing around. Now that doesn't mean I want to move. That means I understand the process and I know how to do it. So my service has demonstrated the leadership qualities required and that it's missing in Washington and South Florida. And I know one of the rules here is if you mention your opponent's name, he gets a chance to say something. So I want to say, where is Carlos? He's not here. He's not here on any of the issues. Carlos needs to show up, not in person. Today should be in Washington, where he is. That's cool. Where is his representative? Not here. Where, more importantly than that, where is he on the issues that matter to people in Key West and the rest of the Keys? Rising seas, he ignores it. Florida's rising cost of living. What does he do? He blames. He blames instead of going for solutions. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody, and I hope it got your blood going.
This was unconventional because you can have a little bit more of a closing statement if you like. Do you have any points you didn't make? Give him a minute to really wrap it up because he sort of brought his closing statement into an answer.
So thank you, panelists, for that easy, why does the Navy have naval service have a relevance to serving in public life? Well, Jim and I both know that it is relevant. It is relevant from both the federal level and in the local level. And I'm not endorsing Jim or I want to endorse Chris, so I will endorse Chris because of part of loyalty. But I'll tell you what, I respect the hell out of Jim, and I know that he is a man of character, and I know that Chris is a man of character, and that's part of why I'm running. I can assess character. Sometimes I make mistakes on that assessment, we all do. But you can recognize that we don't know the next problem that comes up in life or in our government. And you're gonna want people that are forthright in addressing it and going for what is right for the people. I won't work for any president. My opponent will never cross Donald J. Trump. He just won't do it. I will work for you in all cases. Thank you.
All right, Tim Root, come on up, Tim. I know Tim's here.
Yep, I'm right here.
Oh. Come on up, Tim. Mandy, you're going to ask the first question. We'll try to get through a round. We'll just do one round and then do a closing statement. That'll be about 10 minutes. So. Right.
Hi, Tim.
Used to it.
So I just recently was on the Keys Energy website and went through the past year of agendas for the Key West Utility Board. And it looks like your meetings last about an average of 23 minutes, and every vote was unanimously approved. Is there something I'm missing, or what do you believe is sort of, why should everybody believe or know what the utility board does? What is the importance of it?
You asked me two questions.
Okay, what is the importance and significance of the Key West Utility Board?
The importance of the utility board is we actually are in control of reviewing all the policies that are done for Keys Energy, for employees and for ratepayers. We also review all the contracts for all of our pole restoration, all of our new installations. We keep the budget and we track it, and we have a 5-year plan. Every year we go over that 5-year plan and make sure that we're following it as close as we can. We also do strategic planning for all of the company once a year, so that we're following a set of guidelines that keeps improving your reliability and customer service. The biggest thing that I do is being a contractor and reviewing contracts and policy review for those contracts is insurance papers, pricing, that kind of thing. And we actually also hire the CEO and the CFO.
So is there ever any pushback between the board and management?
Not so much the board and management, no. It's more, we are in a time now, again, we have a little partisanship going on, and it's more about sustainability with EVs versus should we do that much. And a lot of people come to us wanting us to do solar energy and stuff, but we're actually a nonprofit. We can guide people to do it, but we don't have the resources to do research and development.
Joe.
What would you say are the biggest challenges the board is going to face as we move into the next 5 or 10 years here in the Florida Keys?
Well, the biggest challenges right now, and that's the reason I'm coming back for 4 more years, is that we now, with the new cybersecurity and firewalls that we've got going on, we have a new system called advanced metering, which FPL has started. There's Duke Energy has started. A lot of the bigger cities have started, and it actually helps you look at your bill, and you can see where you can save money, how you can be more sustainable. It also helps us track usage so that our peak hours, which I don't know if a lot of people know about, but the peak hours from 4 o'clock till about 9 o'clock. About 9 o'clock at night, our rate at peak rate is almost 13 or 14 times what our regular rate is. So trying to get that out there, everybody, today, because we really need to, when you're charging your electric car or you're using your dryers, it would be best to use them not in those hours to save.
Help me understand how peak metering, what does that have to do with cybersecurity?
Pardon?
You said you're back because you're of the cybersecurity, and then you talked about peak metering, and I'm curious what the connection is.
The advanced metering system does a little bit of both. It's protecting the company, but mostly the advanced metering is more for watching peak usage and stuff like that. Our cybersecurity is more in-house software.
What cybersecurity concerns should we have?
Right now, we have just signed on with a new company that actually does a search for our software, and it actually tries to find where we have problems that our firewall might not get into. And right now, at 4 out of 5, we are rated as a 4. We're doing very well.
Kim, you can follow up.
I know you mentioned that you're a nonprofit. There's not a lot you can do with clean energy, but what type of clean energy has the board and Keys been working on?
I didn't quite hear.
What type of clean energy has the board been working on?
Well, right now, we have teamed up with Florida Municipal Power Association, FMPA, and we have 3.5 gigawatts of solar power right now that we are using, and we have signed up for another 15 megawatts over the next 2 or 3 years. We have also a long-term plan to keep signing up with that.
I'll give you some latitude for as long a closing statement as you'd like.
Oh, okay.
Well, within reason, a couple minutes.
Well, I really don't have a lot to say. I've been on the board for 11 years, and I appreciate helping the community. I've served, as a lot of you know, in the planning board, the Heart Board, the Habitat for Humanity, Affordable Housing Task Force, and this is something I know as a contractor, and I was unanimously voted by the rest of my board members as chairman, and I carry a lot of experience and leadership in the construction and the purchasing of materials like I've done all my life and my career, and as we do here at Keys, and I like to help. And please vote for me on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tim. Next up, we're going to do State Rep, District 120. I got that one right this time? Yes. Okay, good. Come on up, guys. While they're coming up, I'm going to thank Tennessee Williams for all they've done. And this is, to me, this is our greatest venue. I mean, we've got all the room in the world. You can see everybody, hear everybody. The sound is perfect up there, I think. Can everybody hear well? Yeah. Good. So we've got Jim Mooney and Michael Travis. You guys take a seat and we'll get right to it. And it's going to be Joe, you'll start this out.
Does it matter who I go to first, or what? That all about?
No. And for anybody new here, most of you've done this. I let the panelists have a lot of latitude. They get to pick if it's going to be, if they want to ask a question of one or both. We try not to do the both because it gets repetitive. But if I do keep track, and if it seems to be out of balance, we'll try to ask him to ask a question to someone that hasn't had enough questions. But for the most part, ask away.
Okay. All right, start with Jim. Insurance is the bad word. We've been talking about that forever in the Florida Keys, and now once again, tragedy has struck, and it's a bigger issue than ever. When are we going to hear something coming out of Tallahassee that actually addresses that?
Thank you, Joe. We've had this conversation on the radio, I think, for 120 years now, it feels like. The quick answer is there's been an amazing amount of progress made over the last 4 years. Now, I know that we laugh about that, but the reality of it is we're not going to feel it in Monroe County. It's just not going to happen because we have no competition at all. The flip side is, until we get competition in the state of Florida, which we now have 19 new companies coming in, we had 13 companies ask for a rate reduction, and 8 companies that asked for no increases this year. We had the tort reform last year that absolutely killed the lawyers. The lawyers can no longer file fraud claims. That is now a part of history. It's not going to happen overnight. This isn't a year, this is a decades-long problem. I have lived in the Keys my entire life. Insurance has been at the top of the list my entire life, particularly as a homeowner. And while unfortunately we're just not going to see an overnight rate reduction, between inflation, the cost to rebuild, and the lack of building codes in other parts of the state, we are always paying the piper in Monroe County, and that's unfortunately a fact.
Thanks, Jim. Linda.
I'm going to follow up on the insurance question, Jim. Insurance companies like Heritage have been plagued with all kinds of lawsuits and problems and challenges that the state has recognized. Many of these private insurance companies are undercapitalized. They take the premiums, they can't pay out the claims. I know that Tallahassee claims to have done a lot, and I happen to be one of the people who think we will never be able to pay enough in insurance premiums to cover the costs. But I go back to this question. When are we going to actually see comprehensive wind and flood and homeowner insurance out of Tallahassee?
Okay, we're going to start with flood because flood is not a Tallahassee issue. That is a federal issue, and that is absolutely not a state issue. Homeowners insurance, wind insurance, again, we are in a zone where we only have one option, citizens. That's it. We did have Frontline in Monroe County. They've quit writing. The rest of the state of Florida has a multitude of options. And again, there's 19 new companies waiting to come in at the end of November. But comprehensive, so here's what happens on the floor. We're going to tell the insurance companies how much they can charge us. And I will challenge any in this room, if I say, you're going to build my house for $100,000 on the ocean, I'm going to get the answer that, no, I'm not. We can't tell companies what to charge. So what we've done in Tallahassee, and it's the only thing that has been done in the last 4 years, we started with the roof issues. First it was a full replacement, we fixed that. But I'm telling you, the single largest thing that's happened in Tallahassee is tort reform. Once we remove the ability for these law firms to single-handedly create massive fraud, knowing that there's no such thing as a $450,000 roof in the state of Florida. Yes, you got your new roof for $35,000. The guy handed you the assignment of benefits, which has now been removed. He's got his $35,000, and the attorneys have got their $300,000 as they sue. That's unfortunately where we're at. This didn't happen 3 years ago or 5 years ago. This happened decades ago, and it's just the only thing is we can't tell them what to charge. We can only show them. And again, I'm gonna get right back to it. I said it on the floor more than once. We must make the rest of the state of Florida increase their building standards. If we don't, who in the world is going to come serve us? They're not. Look in the news today. Half those homes blew away. Bad building.
Okay,
Kim.
this is kind of a twofold question.
Okay,
I'm
let's
going to
give
go
it-
to Michael.
make sure Michael gets it.
Yep, you got it. Michael, we don't know a lot about your background, so this is kind of a twofold question. What do you plan to bring to the table if elected? And, for example, Governor DeSantis recently vetoed all funding for the arts. How would you work to overcome that decision during the next budget negotiation?
Are we on? There we go. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name's Michael, if I haven't said hello already. So it is kind of tragic that the governor that we have here in the state of Florida has his magical Sharpie that he can go through and cross out all the things he doesn't like or things that might have disrupted his plans for whatever he wanted to do. Now, I have learned a lot over my year and a half of running for office, and there are things that are happening in Tallahassee. There are bills being drafted, but they might not even make it to the floor because of our current supermajority that we have. So part of that would be to elect more blue so we can balance out some of the red and change the leadership to say, hey, we need to focus on other things, not creating problems where there aren't any.
This could be for either or both, but if the amendment to legalize recreational marijuana passes, what are, amendment 3, thank you, Michael. If that does pass with the required 60% majority, what impacts or potential negatives could you see for Monroe County, and how could the state mitigate those?
So Michael start, and then I guess that is a good one for both.
No, I am actually happy about Amendment 3 showing up in Florida. For one of the reasons, people are going to smoke it. Let's tax it. We'll bring in more money to the state. We'll be able to spend more money on the arts so the governor doesn't have to cross it out. But in the same time, the penalization and criminalization of recreational drugs like marijuana is more of a racist law that came out because a lot of people of color were using marijuana and it was a way to hide them somewhere else. In the Keys, there's a lot of marijuana going around already. People ask me about it all the time. We are a zero drug tolerance party. However, I do see a lot of our Delta 8 and zero THC companies fighting this because that is how they're making money now, because you can't get actual cannabis legally yet. But I am excited to see what happens.
Jim, thoughts on marijuana amendment?
Sure. So Amendment 3 is sort of a two-edged sword. The reality of it is, you're not going to be able to grow a plant in your backyard, so that is off the table, and many people are under the impression that you'll be able to grow pot in your backyard and smoke it, and it won't be a fine. Most of Monroe County, I believe, is about a $125 fine for less than an ounce of marijuana right now. We started that in the city of Alameda years ago. But the reality of it is, if you're going to buy bud, and this is about bud, you're still going to have to go to a medical marijuana facility. The green machines around the state are not going to be able to sell buds in their shops. So I happened to fight on the floor. The CBD bill was out there this year. I got that vetoed. I worked behind the scenes diligently to get that. They were going to knock out a $10 billion industry and 100,000 jobs by turning all CBDs into a Schedule I drug. I know a lot about CBDs right now. I debated a state prosecutor on the floor, a Republican that I thought I defeated, and if we'd have gone to board, I would have defeated that bill on the floor, but we defeated it behind the lines. But how it's going to impact us, I think local laws are ultimately going to say you can't smoke in certain areas, because I think the big thing is like you're going to say everything's going to smell like reefer. In Tallahassee, when you get in an elevator, I don't care where it's at, in any apartment building, you're going to smell like pot when you get off it. The college kids. You're going to smell like pot. The poor dogs have no jobs left. And I'm being serious, like there's just no jobs left for those pot-sniffing dogs anymore. But I think the local ordinances are going to be in line to say, listen, you can't smoke at this Mathers Beach. I think that's where the rubber's going to hit the road, honestly. I think in your yard's fine and your house is fine.
It seems like that might be an issue that would be ripe for state preemption with our current governor.
Well, I think the governor has made it pretty clear that he thinks the state shouldn't smell like reefer and pot all the time. I think he's made it very clear, and you've seen his ads. But I think, yes, the state legislature can have some stuff, but it's still, I think, going to boil down to local ordinances, because it's going to be in the hands of the local ordinances. And again, right now, in Monroe County, I believe the county itself is $125 fine, just if you get caught with less than an ounce of marijuana. Dennis could correct me, but I think it's pretty close. So it's not like it's a hardcore crime right now, unless you're just being an idiot.
So in your stance, you would be fine with letting it remain a locally regulated?
Well, I absolutely. I've won awards for 4 straight years from local government.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Michael, what were your thoughts on the same question?
Yeah, I was going to say, can I ask Michael about the state preemption and
Yes, and
local
then you're done.
regulation? Sorry.
So for those of you who have been following me for the last year and a half, I am completely against state preemption, and I am for home rule and the will of local governments and the voters who make our decisions, for better or worse. We still have to support them. Now, I do believe that we should have some regulation as opposed to where the detectable odor of marijuana should be used, such as, not in businesses or public buildings, but it should be treated like we treat tobacco and cigars now. Yeah, sure, I don't like somebody walking past me puffing on their stogie, but they're allowed to. Let them do it. And we can even create our own little public marijuana bars, like we have the hookah bars for everybody to go and gather around in and do what they need to do. But there's more to marijuana than just smoking. There's also the lotions and the creams and the...
Let's move on to the next
make
question.
it feel good. Yes, okay, let's go.
We've killed all the lawyers and we put the drug-smoking dogs out of work, so. All right, Joe, what else are we going to do in Tallahassee?
Okay, so let me ask this question of you, Jim, and I think I've asked you this on the air before. The state backs Citizens Insurance, so why can't the state control what they do?
They do to a degree, but the thing is they are a separate entity. The reality of it is again, that Citizens Insurance, I don't know many people who've been here a super long time. This lady apparently has the answer, so I can let her speak if she...
No, ma'am.
I'm just saying, if you're
this
going to
goes
interrupt me,
what
that's
we
fine.
spoke about earlier.
I think that...
spoken out a few times, so you're okay.
I appreciate your input and happy to talk to you after it's over. The reality of it is that, again, Citizens was really formed initially for Monroe County only. It has unfortunately grown to take in sinkholes in Orlando. It has just turned into this monster. Now we're down $700,000 in the depopulation that they're looking for, and until they depopulate it, because Citizens is still the cheapest insurance in the state of Florida, and that's why so many people run to it. We have got to stop that. The only way you're going to stop that, again, you get back to tort reform, you get back to the roofing industry, you get back to the things that have caused so much of the issues in the insurance industry, which ultimately falls on our shoulders. We don't get free insurance as elected officials, in case anybody's not sure of that. We all pay the piper. It's a horrible situation to be in. I have friends, myself included. I was going to go $18,000 in flood insurance, even though I can't control flood. I mean, these are things that are catastrophic to home ownership and to a stable life. But, you know, and again, until you depopulate citizens and get more companies in here to write policies, create competition, it's just not going to change a great deal. And that's a hard fact to swallow. Joe, you've had many conversations on this, and it's very, very difficult to swallow that pill.
Time, Jim, thanks. Linda.
This is for both candidates, and Mike, you can start. Let's go back to the amendment list, and first a disclaimer. I voted no on everything except 3 and 4. All right, yeah, and I put that disclaimer in there
No
because
cheering for the question.
I have a mail-in ballot, and it's done on that part. So we've already talked about 3 and marijuana, which is certainly better smelling than stale beer. But we haven't talked about 3. Are you voting, 4? Are you voting yes on 4? And if not, why not? If yes, why?
I believe that government has no business in the private medical decisions of people, whether it be for personal health care in the way of sexual health or end of life.
You know, so when we went from 18 to 12, it was very difficult for me. I struggled tremendously with that. Two years ago, I believe it was. This past, when it went to 6 weeks, I unfortunately was not on the floor. My fiance had a horrible car crash in Alamorada, and I was in the trauma center for a week. But I made my statements very clear. I was not for the 6-week abortion bill, and I stand by that. I cannot fathom, and I'm probably one of the older people in this room, why we're still having this conversation. It seems like since I was in high school, this conversation has been going on, and it honestly should not be a conversation. We figure out how to fix insurance, for God's sakes. So I'm obviously not in favor of that. I think 6 weeks is a horrible number. I think it's highly unfair, not only to the woman, but I mean, 6 weeks, I'm not even sure an athlete would know they were pregnant, to be honest with you.
So that's a yes vote from you on 4. Thank you.
Kim and Mandy, try to find something with
Okay.
short answers.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's better to have more, sometimes I like a little more volume or variety than in-depthness.
Okay, I guess this one will be for Jim really either, but how will you help the county and the Aqueduct Authority to get funding for the proposed new 7-mile bridge?
Can you clarify that? How am I going to help the aqueduct get funding?
Yeah, the aqueduct is going to have to move their entire pipe.
Okay, as follows, because the funding for the bridge is coming straight out of FDOT. So, and of course, I don't know how many people realize that the first plans they released failed to put the pipeline on it.
And Jim, just back up and I'll help everybody. The current 7-mile bridge, our water line runs right through the middle of it. And evidently the design for the new bridge didn't take that into account. And they're tearing the old bridge down, so the aqueduct, as on Joe's show said, it's going to cost millions and millions of dollars to put a new water line in, and we don't have any money for it. So,
yes. So obviously, Aqueduct Authority is a lifeblood. So in the last 4 years, we've received 20, 30, about $60 million, give or take 10, for the Aqueduct Authority to start. Now, that's separate from what they're doing on the ground in Upper Mattacumby and Windley Key right now, but between the RO plants and the upgrades to the RO plant here, the new RO plant in Marathon, the Aqueduct Authority has a very good position in Tallahassee. The legislature and the Senate understand the nuances of how we live here, what's required for us to exist in Monroe County. And they're also very aware that we sent them 40 billion pennies last year. And for those that like to do math, that is $400 million in sales tax we sent to the state of Florida. So it's pretty easy to say, listen, we need $20 million. So we'll get the funding for the pipeline and the bridge, but the fact that FDOT forgot to even put it in the bridge design is almost mind-boggling. But that's FDOT.
Mandy, last question to Michael, if you can. You have one? Does anybody have a question? Well,
I don't have a quick one, sorry.
anybody got one for Michael? Okay, go ahead.
What are your thoughts on Rogo and hurricane evacuation?
The easy one. Yes.
An easy one, absolutely. We'll make this fast though. Last year in October, before I had the unfortunate accident of breaking my leg, I was up in Detroit for candidate training. While I was up there, I had mentioned my big stance on vacation rentals and how local government needs to be able to control the amount and location of them. And somebody was like, oh, if you're just full build out or build up. Down here on the islands, we can't build out, we'll be in the water. And we can't really build up because we live at the end of a 150-mile-long extension cord and garden hose that likes to pop every other day. So no, we're full. Go away. No, come spend your money and then go away.
All right, keep the mic. Let's do closing statements.
Closing statements.
Yes.
All right.
Go ahead.
We're going to do this shortly. Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Travis. That is my legal name that I had to go by for the election. Please disregard the error code. I'm not allowed to use that anymore for the duration of this adventure.
You can use it here.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Anyway, continuing on. Yes, I understand that I am very new to the political world, and yes, I have learned a lot in this year and a half since I have decided that I am throwing my hat in the ring. I have learned that there are people on both sides of the aisle that want to put in the good work, that are working with their lobbyists and their team to get bills drafted to actually address things like property insurance. But our current leadership doesn't want to hear it. We want to have a special session to talk about property insurance, but instead we're going to talk about Israel instead. So please, keep calm, stay fabulous, and if you haven't already voted, I'll see you soon.
Thank you. First, this will be my third term if you're fortunate enough to be elected back into the House. I'm very proud of my first 4 years. I have worked my position up into the position of the Appropriations Committee. I'm the Vice Chair of the Technology Administration Appropriations Committee. I also received the highest grade from the Democratic Party, by the way, for those that think I'm a Republican at heart. You know what? One thing I learned in Tallahassee, and of course I'm a local guy, I'm a fifth-generation Floridian that grew up in Alamorada and played baseball and football down here and coached against the teams down here. I was a former school teacher, a football coach, a baseball coach. I'm a Keys guy. And one thing I do love doing is serving my community. I can't think of a greater honor than working with the school board, helping out a nuance that happened a couple of years ago where the school board almost lost $2 million, and we fixed that in literally 3 weeks at the end of session to make sure that we didn't lose our $1.8 million per year. It looked like that was about the round number. But more importantly, it's about the bills. Yeah, this year was the lowest number of bills ever since I've been up there. It was only 2,600 bills written this year. 263 were actually signed by the governor. As many as 4,300 bills have been written, and around 250 to 300 get passed. Most of the bills you'll read, as state representatives, we are allowed to carry 7 bills. In this position, Monroe County will take up the majority of those bill slots because of the area of critical state concern. It's the college, it's the county. We have to do everything because when we change one rule here, we have to change state statute. That's not a local bill. We did local bills for the utility in Key West to make sure that people lived inside the districts they represented. We did that to make sure that it couldn't be sold off overnight like Jacksonville's electric utility. The fact is that I'm looking forward to representing you again. I'm proud to represent you, and I promise you I'll be there with respect for our district, and I respect you all. So thank you very much. I look forward to your vote.
Thank you both. Next up, County Commission District 3. Jim and Chris, come on up. And thank you both for being very respectful of each other. While Donna is putting up the name tags, we will thank Duval Street Media. We are videoing this, and once again, we're not live streaming, but we are videoing. I actually had a lot of inquiries today about the live streaming, so this will bring me into my little part of a fundraising pitch to keep Sheldon from beating me up out after the event. This year we've struggled more than most for fundraising, and for all of you candidates, we are a 501c3, so when the election is over, whether you win or lose, if you've got some extra campaign money left after the big party, remember, we give you a venue. You can send a little bit of it our way. So, Let's get to these guys. County Commission District 6, Jim Scholl's the incumbent. Oh, God, I didn't have my glasses. I'm just not gonna say any more numbers tonight. This is for County Commission, and Chris Massicotte, the challenger. Let's get right to it. Linda, you're up first.
If you had to make a decision today, and this is both candidates, would you halt most new development in the Keys, and why?
Jim, you got it in your hand, so you go first.
The short answer to that is yes, because you said most new development. What we need strategically is come over every year when we ask what is needed is workforce housing, and there's reasons for that. A lot of it has to do with the transition from traditional long-term rental property to now what is vacation rental property, because investors bought a lot of the properties and turned them into vacation rentals, and that is legal in the state of Florida, where there are no statutes limiting that. So we hear it from everybody. Workforce housing is the #1 issue, and if we can get more building permits, they will be restricted to workforce housing, the vast majority. So you said most, I'm saying we need some to develop where we can for workforce housing.
How are you going to ensure, though, that they are restricted and in perpetuity? Because there are the new state law it forces the county to provide extensive economic impact statements now if developers disagree with you.
Well, we've done that for years now with deed-restricted workforce housing. Remember, workforce housing is different than low-income housing. That's where you earn at least 70% of your income here in Monroe County. And those deed-restricted units, you have to income qualify and prove that you are in the right range to be able to rent these units. And again, we get it from the medical providers, we get it from our school district, and workforce housing is an absolute necessity. Or we're going to transition, we're going to evolve into a whole different community down here if we don't have a workforce.
Okay. Chris, the same.
You got to, sorry. That's a really good question, and my short answer would also be yes, because I had the privilege of working with Keys Last Stand, and they've created that coalition, and I really believe what they are saying is, there's no rush for us to take any of these ROGOs. We've got plenty of time to really look at our infrastructure, because we were just talking about residential development, but I'm worried about commercial development. And currently in Tavernier, we busted right through our comprehensive plan to build a 50,000 square foot Publix. And I was just visiting that neighborhood on Sunday, and I'm just like trying to imagine the traffic that is going to be coming up there when those poor residents are trying to get home. And now there's a 50,000 square foot Publix plus 86 more units behind it. That is at mile marker 92, where the sewer line is busted like 8 times in the last several months. So we can do a comprehensive study. I wasn't really thrilled with the workshop on infrastructure that we had recently, because it just brought in the heads of all the utilities and saying, yeah, everything's great, we can take as many ROGOs as you want, like go for it. But they're talking about the aqueduct authority saying everything was great and we're fine, but turn on your faucet and you'll see that everything is not fine. We can't handle 3,000 more units, or even anywhere close to that. So we really need to be smart about how we use the existing ROGOs that we have. And I was really upset that we didn't do the 1-for-1 trade when we were giving the developers those 86 ROGOs for the Publix project in Tavernier. I don't want to be. I want to follow a plan. Okay, I just want to say I want to be able to follow a plan.
One follow-up, because I'd like Jim to respond to the Tavernier vote.
That's fair. It's sort of on.
The Tavernier vote brings 86 workforce housing units. That property was zoned industrial, and it could be something else. Even industrial property owners have rights. They were able to work with a developer. The developer, the Publix, offsets the cost to build the housing. We couldn't build housing of that magnitude without some companion that offsets the cost, so it's not coming out of the taxpayers' dollars. So again, it was approved because it isn't a bad location at all. It's the only location left of that size where we could get that many workforce housing units and not have to pay for them.
Thank you. Kim?
This one's for Jim. When you found out that the county clerk had not been doing audits of county offices, and now that he has, there have been multiple inaccuracies in more than one organization. How do you plan to rectify overseeing that clerk's office so that audits are performed on a regular basis?
Well, Kim, you know our clerk is a constitutional officer. We don't oversee him. He works for us in conjunction with us, and they do audits. They have an internal auditor, and they do audits all the time. And we get them in hard copy, and you know, that's the way the process works. And annually, of course, the budget gets its audit as well, and they get the GFOA award every year. So the clerk's office is doing a great job. And when we find something out, when they do audits of individual departments or some of our contracted organizations, then we take that audit and we take action. But Kevin and his staff do a great job, and his internal auditors are very busy.
Mandy, we will thank Kevin for being here tonight. Yes, yes, Kevin Maddock is right there. So, well,
Speaking of audits, at the recent TDC board meeting, or somewhere around September 18th or so, the TDC board approved and is next month going to ask the county commission to approve the hiring of 4 new vice president positions for the TDC, along with a CFO. In hindsight, does that give you pause to make you think that maybe the former director was being asked to do 4 different senior executive level jobs?
Who's this for?
Jim Scholl, please.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Mandy. Yeah, our prior director, I think, my own opinion is she got overwhelmed over time. You know, in the COVID environment, our tourism dollars went way up because everybody came down here temporarily from up north during the winter and had vacation rentals, and we had we generated more revenue from the tourist taxes than we ever had, and that department should have grown over the years as the tourist dollar revenues grew, and we didn't do that. And that is an independently contracted entity to the county. They are not a county department. You know, we contract with Visit Florida, and they have their own board of directors that were overseeing the actual day-to-day operations. So obviously it wasn't managed properly, and we've hired a great new executive director over there, and I will support her expanding the staff, obviously, because they've got a heck of a lot more money to take care of, including the $35 million that the state is giving us to build workforce housing.
Joe, for Chris, if you would.
All right, Chris, when we had you on the radio several weeks ago, we were talking about your platform and the things you wanted to do. And you said one of the damnedest things I've ever heard anyone say. You said that the meetings were too short. Explain that to us. And then if we could get Jim to give his opinion on that as well.
Yeah, well, they do go a little bit longer than the utility board meetings, I guess, at 23-minute average there. But what I meant by that, Joe, is that meetings are scheduled to go all day. The bulk approvals, the consent agendas are like a mile long in there, and they, you know, just the current commissioners just go through the meeting, and there's very little discussion. There's very little like, hang on. There's, you know, what are we doing here? Asking the staff more information for things and different kinds of you know, items and stuff. And when, you know, there should be public discussion, and it just feels like there's certain things where it doesn't feel like the fix was already in, and the good example is we're gonna go back to the tavern near Publix. Like, that's just made no sense to me. And there wasn't a whole lot of discussion on that after all of those poor residents came at one after the other and saying, please don't do this, after the planning board said, please don't do this, after the staff said, please, this is not the right project in the right, you know, place. I agree, you know, industry, they have, you know, the property rights, but that was not the right thing. Visiting that area, I just cannot see how we're going to be able to do that. And, I get that we need to trade off for workforce housing, the 86 units, but, a Publix takes about 150 employees to run, so now we've already used the 86 units for that. I know they're saying they're not going to use it for that, but that's, there. So I want to have more robust discussions about, what is going on with our county, because, we're missing a lot of things because of it. And there's nothing stopping the county commissioners from requesting an audit or saying we should. They can have, they can encourage the county clerk to request an audit.
Jim, short meetings, are they?
Well, it depends on how you look at it, I guess. Yeah, the meeting itself is short, but every one of those meetings has a published agenda to the public. Everybody can look through and see if there's items on there. We invite the public to participate in person or via Zoom at every meeting, and they can address the commission and provide input however they would choose to do so. But before the meetings ever happen, starts a week and a half before the meetings ever happen, we have meetings with the staff, all of our senior staff meetings, from the administrator, the county attorney, and the principal staff members that have items on the agenda, and we communicate with them back and forth. Well, what are the details? How did we get here? Why is this important? What are the options? And get the recommendations from staff. And this is all individual. Florida has a sunshine law. We don't get to talk amongst ourselves ahead of time, but we do communicate with the staff, each individually. When it comes before the commission, when there's discussion, I don't always know how I'm going to vote before I hear from the public and before we have discussions, but they don't have to last an hour. They can transpire pretty quickly. So the meetings are as long as the public wants them to be.
Chris, this question is for you, Chris. And you're campaigning on lower taxes. It's a tried and true strategy. Everybody likes lower taxes. I don't actually care where my tax rate is. I want to know, if you lower taxes, what services do I lose?
There's two parts to a tax rate. There's the millage rate, and then there's the property appraisal value. And we've gone up almost double over the last several years, 5 or 6 years. About what you're going to lose, I think what we need to do is just really take a look at this budget and say, where is this money going? Are we hired? Can we do things better with new technology? Can we get things done in a better way? I don't want to say what we're going to lose in particular, because I don't think we do. I think we can find a lot of there's a lot of wasteful spending as there is, and I think if we are able to challenge the staff and say let's get things into a place where we can lower taxes, because my taxes on a property that I rent to long-term residents went up almost $1,200 in 1 year. And that wasn't a new appraisal or anything, and that's $100 a month, and that's a lot to ask of a school teacher right now. And so that's where that came from, because if you're homesteaded, it's one thing, and I see that all the time. But if you're not, and long-term renters are not homesteaded, they don't get that exemption. Their landlords don't get that, and they have no choice but to pass that on to their renters, and that's where that really came from.
Kim?
This one's for Jim. There's been a lot of situations where some problems were unveiled in state attorney investigations, while others were unveiled during audits. And most of the county commissioners that I've talked to, even during the primary, kept referring to they really need to gain the confidence of the people back. How do you do that?
Well, you do it by setting a good example. I mean, that's first and foremost. The first time I was the city manager of the city of Key West, we had some significant financial challenges of what my predecessor had established. So the very first day I was there in that position, I had all of the directors come in and said, basically, life as you know it is over, and we need to earn and keep the public trust. And the number one rule for that is take or be good stewards of taxpayers' money. They're paying us to provide them a value for all the services and everything that we do. And if our audit isn't perfect, then we're not doing our jobs right. And our finance director at the time had a hard time getting the directors to participate in the audit process, and it was embarrassing. And after the first 5 years, the auditor said it was the most financially sound city in the state of Florida. So I thought I did a good job. I didn't know I was going to come back. But anyway, that's how you do it.
And Dennis Ward is here, our state attorney. Thank you, Dennis, since you were mentioned. Mandy? No, he does not.
For Chris Massicotte, a report recently came, just in the past week or so, came out of the county clerk's office about county take-home cars for employees. And there was significant limitations in what they could study because of a change in vendors, but also they had found that at least one employee at the Marathon Airport had used his county car for 75% personal use, another one for 51% personal use, and that there was an executive level position that had been assigned a county take-home car but didn't use it and instead was reimbursed $15,000 over 3 or 4 years for mileage. How would you address that? In what sort of, would you consider bringing in an outside agency or to study spending by the county?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I would bring in an outside agency to, do full audits of all the departments in the county. I just read that audit the other day, and, that kind of abuse of county vehicles, like that does happen, and it happens everywhere, but this was pretty egregious of what was being used. And so that's another example of wasteful spending. And I think that we can do better. And the other thing is there's so many audits that have come out. That's just one of them. And, another one is with the Trauma Star and the theft of the fentanyl and the other opioids, like 600 vials, like how much of that got into our community? And I just don't understand how it could have gone that long when they knew in, the middle of last year that this was, a problem, and nothing was done until the grand jury report came out. And so I think I would be a lot more proactive in making sure that we are not wasting money to start, and that is the first place we would start, is that we're not, wasting our taxpayers' money. I want to look a resident in the eye and say, we're doing all that we can to stretch your tax dollar as far as it can go, because I know how hard it is to live here, and I'm tired of watching my friends leave because they can't afford to live here anymore. I've lived here for 7 years, and the budget has tripled in that time. I think we can do better. I know we can do better. And, to go back about, how we're going to regain the trust of the community, I think if we make just one small change on the county commission and have a new person in there asking more questions, we can turn that page.
That's fine, yeah, please, go for it.
But
would you support having an outside?
Question. Go ahead.
Well, take-home vehicles, every vehicle should be satellite tracked. I mean, that's easy. We did it at the city. We weren't doing that when I got there. We were certainly doing it then, and we're doing it now. Once I said that's absolute requirement. You got to be accountable to the taxpayers with how you're using taxpayers' resources. And on the tax side, yeah, your taxes have gone up, but by $2.25 this year. Property taxes, the budget is way up. Why? Because we have huge revenue streams to pay for the Key West Airport, over $100 million of revenue on the revenue side of the budget. There's an expense side of that budget that's gone up. And the helicopters and the EOC.
You can do that in your closing statement.
Yes, sir.
And Jim might ask you a question about it right now. We don't know. Or Joe might. Joe, last question. And then we'll do closing statements.
We had it straight now?
Okay.
Chris, you've used the term wasteful spending a lot. What's some good examples of wasteful spending in the county?
I will start with the waste management contract, which I was shocked when I was sitting there because the staff had presented a couple of options. One was a 10% increase, and the other one was like a 15 or a 17% increase. And then I watched the verbal gymnastics of the commissioners to then get to a 20%. And the staff wasn't prepared to do a 20% ordinance. That came out of nowhere. And that contract was a no-bid contract, and that, for another 5 years. And, it really upsets me that when, we can talk about, campaign finance and things like that, but, Waste Management, after that vote was taken, has given Jim's campaign several $1,000s. They gave Holly's campaign several $1,000s for a job well done. And in New Jersey, where I worked, we called that pay to play, and we outlawed that no business, no person could give any money to either a challenger or a sitting politician if they had business with the county or the state. And now that's not illegal here in Florida, but it just doesn't feel right.
I'm going to, Jim, respond to keep it focused on the campaign contribution from Waste Management.
Well, let me go to the front end of this, though. He says we ignored staff. That's not true. The staff presentation was if the community, the entire county, wanted to go to 1 day a week pickup of trash and garbage and recycling, that would be what we would have to pay.
But Jim, I'm running out of time.
If they wanted more, and all our input was nobody wanted to reduce from 2 days a week to 1 day a week, so that's where that rate came from. Now,
Just quickly, I'll give you that one.
in Florida,
Campaign contribution, because he called you out on that.
all right,
Then we're going to get in the closing
and my
statements.
contributions are, I would say, 98% local. My opponents are not. So he's getting money from everywhere outside of Monroe County to get him elected. I'm here to earn your vote. He's here to buy your vote.
Do I get to respond to that?
No, that's part of our rules. Jim, you just gave him the opportunity to respond. So Chris responded. And in a half hour, we're going to get
98%
to
of the money that I've raised have come from people who live in the Keys and people who love the Keys and visit here. So I'm not taking money from corporations. I'm not taking tons of money from the party. I'm not, the money that I've raised is very small, compared to, from the money that I've raised from organizations is very small compared to that. So, look, it's just individuals that are, like
quiet.
the Keys. So,
Our financials are on the Supervisor of Elections websites. Look them up, please.
That's fine. Let's do closing statements. Minute and a half to 2 minutes. I got a feeling they're going to go towards 2 minutes. Chris start, Jim will end. But again, if you mention the other one, you're going to pay for it, sort of. So
I will not do that. My name is Chris Massicotte. I am running because I want to turn the page for Monroe County. We need some new leadership, some new blood on the county commission so that we can regain the trust of the residents. When I first decided to run, it was over financial spending and financial mismanagement. And then one thing after another kept coming out. We had the TDC audits, and then we had the Trauma Star, and then we have the emergency, the vehicle, take-home vehicle audits, and it's just one thing, the waste management contract, it's one thing after another. And if we just made one small change on the county commission, we can then finally restore some trust, and we will have longer meetings. And I will say this to the people in Tavernier. I know they're not here, but there's a couple more votes to be taken. And if I'm elected county commissioner, we can't change the progress that's going to end up happening there. But I will fight that tooth and nail, and I will make it hard, and I will make it painful for them to actually finish that project.
Jim. Thanks, Todd, and thanks to Hometown and your volunteers and the panelists here today. Very well done, all of you. So, who are you voting for? Obviously, I've been here for 21 years, a little over 21 years. Jolene and I just celebrated 38 years of marriage. My 2 kids graduated from Key West High School. I'm a servant leader, the foundations of who I am. I had great parents. They instilled good values. I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States. It never expired. The U.S. Navy core values are honor, courage, and commitment. Those words mean something. A Rotarian, service above self. That means something. And you build a teamwork to get success. So honesty, integrity, humility, that's what I do. My record of service to our nation and our community is well written and something that's easy to find. And that was all based on those foundations. And in making decisions, I've been in command twice in the Navy. You got to balance all of the good information you can get and find that balance, except with math. Math is an exact science. 2 + 2 is still 4, despite people trying to tell me it's 5. Look, I have a lifetime of service. I'm still here serving. We plan on staying here for a long time, and I'll continue to serve to the best of my ability. And my mother taught me a long time ago, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. So, thank you all, and I look forward to your vote.
Thank you both. Let's give these guys a round. Next up. We'll never get them back in. We're rolling. So, Key West Commission. I don't know what district it is. No, we're not. But we're recording it. We're recording. It'll be on YouTube. Okay, I understand. So Aaron and Marci, come on up. We got Kelly Friend from Audio Video in Paradise up there. She's not doing a whole lot tonight, but we still love her, and she's been with us forever. And again, well, I think on the urinals, Sheldon is in there putting give to hometown, so when people have to take a bathroom break, you'll know to donate. You guys here? Let's keep rolling so we can keep it moving. Aaron and Marci, so there's no incumbent. Clayton Lopez was termed out after 78 years in office. So we're going to go right back to the beginning. Kim, you're going to start us off.
All right. Let's see here. This one's for Marci. How do you feel about transient rentals in your district, and do you feel there's a better way to govern them?
Definitely am not very in favor of the transient rentals if you're speaking about the Truman Annex contract. Yeah. I believe it's a contract, and that's part of good, honest government. We made a contract, we need to stick to it, and when the time runs, the clock needs to run, and that should be the end of the transient licenses. It also will bring hundreds of two-bedroom condos on the market for rental, and we're sorely in need of housing, so I'm very much in favor of sticking to the contract.
Mandy.
This one's for Aaron Castillo. Hi, both of you.
Hey.
Your campaign has received significant financial support from local businessmen, including Ed Swift's Properties, Mark Meisel's Properties, and the Spotswood Companies. How can you assure residents of District 6 and of the city as a whole that you will balance their interests and issues with those of the business interests?
To answer this question, I'd like to just take a moment of silence for just one moment to the hurricane people that suffered during this last hurricane, being we were just so blessed here in Key West. And me running for this office, I know I prayed a lot at the Grotto building about hurricane victims and myself receiving damage to my home. So if we would just take just a moment. Okay. What was your question?
I didn't charge you for that time.
Well, no one came in here thinking about someone else. And we are so fortunate here. We live in hurricane land. I never left Key West for a hurricane. I've always stayed here. And I think, you know, we owe that to our victims that suffered through this crisis. And any time a crisis happens, I think we need to give God thanks for Key West.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the question was that your campaign has raised, as of the last report, about $88,000 compared to Marci Rose's about $33,000. A lot of your donations have come from local businessmen, hoteliers, and developers.
That's not true.
Well, I had from the Ed Swift's companies and the Spotswood Companies and Mark Meisel. But anyway, I just wanted to ask how you would balance the interests of residents and businesses in your district, in District 6.
Mr. Meisel and Mr. Swift employs a lot of people in the Florida Keys. And he secures them with affordable housing or housing allowance, with the 401k, retirement, and insurance benefits for their families. I've known families that worked for the two companies a long time. I ran a corporation for about 10 years. So I know what corporate world is versus in the private sector. But we picking on somebody that helps this community when you say corporations, because the few corporations that gave me campaign contribution, they are here locally. They employ locally. They help local. Anything that we need here locally, they are here for us. And this, to answer about my campaign contribution, I've got more individual contributions from people in this community that just want to see this community survive the last piece of District 6.
Thank you, Aaron.
This is for both of you. Obviously, neither one of you were on the commission at the time to participate, but you certainly were following the time when Al Childress was the city manager of Key West. And then when he was fired, I'd like to hear from both of you what you thought about him, the job he did, and how it was handled, his exit from the city.
Does Aaron start? Got the mic.
Well, again, the city of Key West needed somebody to run its city the way the commission saw fit. And Mr. Al Childress is a friend of mine. Even right now with the selection committee of selecting a city manager, if the will of the people says they want Al Childress back, I'm with the people. Let's bring Al Childress back. But I can't make something happen that's already been done by the previous commission. I'm not even a commissioner yet. But if I am elected city commission, I'm going for the best city manager there is we can have in the city of Key West. Thank you.
Marci.
Our city manager, Al Childress, was fired without cause and without any plan for a succession in place, despite unanimous support from the public that had come out, at least at the resolution hearing itself or at the firing hearing itself. That process drew a lot of scrutiny, and on the same day we were denied funding by the TDC to the amount of over $5 million, which clearly showed dysfunction in the city. So to me, that was an example of not very good government. It was done at a very bad time as well, right when hurricane season was coming and right during our budget, and we really didn't have any successor in place to lead. So I support Al Childress, and I don't think we did the right thing in the right way.
Last year, there were three major well, they're still there, but three major renovation projects that the city is moving forward on. Renovations and new facilities at Bayview Park, the Duval Street rebuild, and Mallory Square. Major development plans for the city. If you're elected, and this is for both of you, what will you do about those projects, and where do you feel they fit in the future of Key West?
Start with Marci this time.
Can you repeat it? Was the three?
Bayview, Duval Street, and Mallory Square. Three major redevelopment projects that
And
are
Southernmost Point.
Pardon?
Southernmost Point also.
Oh, yeah, that one's done. All right.
If they're done in a fiscally responsible way and an environmentally friendly way, I would like to encourage that. I'm not aware of these projects intimately, so I can't speak to it exactly, but I am in favor of fiscally responsible development and environmentally responsible development. That sounds like a lot to do at once. I'm not anti-development per se, but I do know that we've exceeded a lot of our capacity for new development. And certainly infrastructure needs to be cleaned up and things can be beautified. So I don't know what else to say beyond that at this point. I think I need more specific questions.
I'd like to answer those developments, and I didn't think it was very fair to the residents and taxpayers of Key West to hire some consultant from I don't know where to give us direction on something that we know we are here in Key West. We have a unique situation here. What works in New York City and Chicago don't work in Key West. We have to figure it out and make it work for our community. Mary Square has been sitting there dormant, where the performers are not even able to perform on the pier there. And you can't even drive a car because you don't know whether it's gonna sink in the ground there. So it takes me back to a football game that started the first Key West High School game that we got rained out. We built a stadium there, state-of-the-art stadium, and they couldn't even play there. They had to play in the back of the school. So what did we learn from that? Are we learning the same issue? We hiring someone to do a job that's not being done properly here that we need in Key West.
So if I understand both your answers, and I appreciate your frankness, neither one of you are very familiar, if at all, with these three major development projects.
I am.
Okay, it didn't sound like it. I'm sorry about that, but...
Well, you can make it sound
okay.
like you want, but...
All right, let's move on. Kim.
All right, this is for Aaron. How will you commit to paving streets and repairing sidewalks? Just basic stuff.
Well, here again, I currently chair the redevelopment of District 6, and there's tax increment monies that's being put aside for projects. I think District 6 has the most development going on right now with the Douglas Gym expansion and with the 3.2, with the lofts, and with the 28 that's for sale, that we haven't even worked out the details with. However, the money that's being put aside for projects, these were monies that were supposed to have been put aside for sidewalks and beautification of District 6. And here again, we back at the same thing. Where are we gonna get the money? Well, we talked about bonds. We talked about ways of the budget directive for the city, tightening the belt. But first and foremost, we gotta take care of our employees and take care of the streets and sidewalks with what we got right now. We can't wait for a grant to come through. Right now, we're dealing with flood in Bahama Village, and another hurricane that's about to come, and we don't know how it's gonna affect us. So I think we need to focus on what comes first. I think we need to be prepared for that inevitable.
Thank you, Aaron. Mandy.
Okay, that's a good lead into my next question for both candidates. With regard to needing funding sort of sooner rather than later for immediate needs for paving, for both candidates, how do you feel about the bond issue that will be on the upcoming ballot? And some of that, you know, there's about $200 million out there that would basically be sort of a line of credit, as one of the former commissioners described it, to one of the categories would be for paving and infrastructure.
Start with you, Aaron, the bond issue.
Well,
the referendum.
I think the voters, it's been put out to decide that issue. But personally, I don't think we should have to pay the price of a bond issue. And I know we need some things done, but I think they can be done in-house if we budget our monies right. And the emergency things that we need, we could bond out. But right now, I don't think that bonding is gonna benefit the residents of Key West. And when I say Key West, yes, I'm a District 6 commissioner elect to be, but you gotta realize something. We represent from College Road all the way to Key West, and that bond issue is gonna affect every one of us if we put too much into the bond. We need to fix what we need to fix that needs to be fixed now, and work on our lobbyists in Tallahassee and the federal government to help us with the rest.
Marci, same question, the bond issue, the bond referendum.
The bond referendum is interesting because it's separated into several parts, and it can be a little bit misleading because it doesn't tell people that if you vote no for each of these areas that the bond is for, that doesn't mean that those projects will not get done. They can still get done. However, getting a bond may be a good idea because the bond is like a line of credit, but you don't accrue interest on the money that's not used. So that's an interesting point, because it's not money that's sitting out there that you're accruing interest on that money the whole time. It's only when you use the money for a specific project that it will begin to accrue the interest. And you still have to go through the same exact process that you would for any development or any project. You still have to do all of the planning, all of the requests for productions, and get the information that you would have to get with any project, with or without the bond. So you can still go for grants, you can still do all of those things and be able to utilize the bond money properly, but it would save time for each project from having to go back and possibly take another year to get that money when you decide that something needs to be done in the city, whether that be, you know, the Martin Luther King pool or infrastructure that needs to be fixed. And certainly our sidewalks in our district are a death trap, if nothing else, in many of the streets. It's awful. So having that bond money would possibly be a good thing.
Thank you. Joe.
The last couple of city commissions have been sort of spendthrifty, not thrifty at all, but spending a lot of money on consultants and headhunting firms. I loved it when I heard Mayor Enriquez come in and say, we're not going to do that anymore. And she told me the figure, I forgot what it was. It was a ridiculous amount of money. What do you think about that, as opposed to keeping these decision-making issues in-house and letting the commission figure this stuff out and not hiring somebody from Chicago?
Marci first.
I agree that we can handle a lot of these things in-house. However, if there's an issue like the county was dealing with, where there could be a conflict of interest, in those scenarios you may have to hire outside. If there's no conflict of interest, I don't see a reason why we can't handle those issues in-house.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I just explained that to you in so many words that, you know, we paying a lobbyist for monies, federal monies up there, and I don't see anything trickling down through Monroe County or Key West that's benefiting us. Here it is. I had a house with water in it 3 times already. Down the street, they lifting up a house, and on United Street, they're lifting up a house. But because I have a paid house, I'm not eligible for the grant that Monroe County offers for lifting my house to elevation. I don't think that that is right. But here, they told me is a grant coming out in 2025 that's homeowners that, we can't even buy flood insurance in the area I live in. So I don't qualify for any of the federal grant money. So one of the reasons I'm running for commissioner, not because somebody asked me to run, I've been active for the last 20 years in doing affordable housing. I've just completed 20 units on Big Pine Key, 22 units, matter of fact.
Thanks, Aaron. You're getting kind of way off the subject matter there.
Well,
we'll have time.
You want to know who the candidate is? That's what this was all about. You want to know
Well,
what I've
we're out
done?
of time anyway.
Okay.
So we're moving on. Linda, I think you're next. And then this is the last question, then we'll go to closing statements.
Question for both candidates. If you are elected, what will be your first 3 priorities?
Okay, Aaron, you can talk about that kind of stuff.
My first priority would be the flooding issue. And I'm not talking about just District 6, because it comes from the whole Atlantic side of the ocean there. And then we talk about our police department. Our police department is the finest police department, I think, in the world. Safe streets, clean city. We got a lot of tightening up to do, but I want to give a shout out to my endorsement by the Key West PD, the fire department, the Monroe County Rescue, and the my doctor, Dr. Jerome Covington, and the sheriff, of course, Rick Ramsey. And I'd like to thank all of you who's here today that gave me the courage to have that moment of silence in reference to, if you never went through a hurricane before, you need to stay and see what a hurricane really is. Amen. Okay?
So your first priority is the flooding. I got that. What's 2 and 3?
The second is our clean streets.
Okay.
And clean up the iguanas in this city, especially in the cemetery.
Thank you.
And vote for Aaron Castillo, District 6 Commissioner.
Marci, your top 3 priorities, and then we'll go into your closing statement, and Aaron's closing statement. So.
Okay. My top priority would probably also be the rising water and dealing with that through stormwater and runoff, and working with the city to make sure that we can do the best we can to deal with the environmental issues caused by rising water. The second priority would be our nearshore water quality. We have a program through city funding for water quality monitoring program led by Dr. Patrick Rice at the college here. And the last quarterly report showed turbidity levels at the cruise port exceed the EPA legal limits for 20% of the cruise ship's dockings, sometimes by greater than 400%. So I would want to support the findings based on the data and reduce the environmentally harmful levels of turbidity. My third issue also has to do with water, and that is drinking water. We have unfortunately found through a recent study that was peer-reviewed through Florida University or University of Florida that we have the highest level of PFAS in our county and the entire state. And for those of you who don't know what PFAS are, they're forever chemicals known as polyfluoroalkyl substances. These were started in the 1940s and put in things like Teflon, paint products, and all different kinds of things, but they are now probably in every one of our bloodstreams. They're found in water, air, earth, and animals we eat. So I would want to work with the Florida Keys Aqueduct Authority to make sure that we have clean water to drink, clean water to swim in, and protect ourselves from drowning in the water that surrounds us.
Good. So that's your 3.
Those are my 3,
Top
all
3.
water.
Now do your closing statement.
My closing statement, Marci Rose, I've lived in Key West for 41 years. I've lived in my district for 30 years. I've been an attorney for 32 years. I practice real estate probate and estate planning. My practice in real estate lends me to be extremely qualified for this position as city commissioner. I understand land use, I understand land use maps, I understand real estate, zoning issues, planning issues, and I'm also an environmental advocate. I've been an environmental advocate my whole life, especially here in Key West. I've worked with Reef Relief, Clean Florida Keys, Last Stand. Two of my greatest accomplishments were getting US 1 adopted as a scenic highway through my work with Clean Florida Keys and through my work with Reef Relief, bringing our city to advanced wastewater treatment. I've had to work with state and federal agencies to get these things done. As an attorney, it's similar to being a commissioner in terms of setting policy and establishing laws that our community wants to live by. So I feel like I have the qualifications to do this job. I'm a public servant. I'm doing this for the community so that I can help. I'm not necessarily doing this for myself. In fact, I'm not doing this for myself. I know it's going to be a lot of work that resembles law, which I don't always love, but I'm very familiar with reading and setting policy, and I'm ready to do that. So vote for Marci Rose, votemarcirose.com, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Marci. Now, Aaron, you can talk about whatever you want.
I'd like to set the record straight. I am not for the Casa Marina project. Let's get that out. I don't know who's been putting out. I am one of the people, for the people, with the people. Whatever the neighbors decide, I am with. I never said or met with anybody about the Casa Marina development. I don't even, it's always been something that's been questionable. What do the people think? The people are the residents of Key West, okay? Workforce housing. We've got 100 units being built right now inside District 6, along with 28 for sale. We got scattered BCCLT properties out there. I've been chairman of Monroe County Housing Authority, where I just told you I developed 32 units in the Upper Keys, with rent starting at $400 for low-income residents. And these are not apartments, they houses where you could drive your car up underneath. Built hurricane-proof, okay? We can do the same thing with those BCCLT properties. I have a lot to offer the city of Key West. I've been here all my life. My ancestors fought for single district voting for this reason, and it doesn't work anymore. Yeah, the neighborhood has gentrified, but they still neighborly, and they need representation.
Start wrapping up there.
I am one of the people, again, for the people, with the people. In closing, I would like to say, vote for Aaron Castillo, City Commissioner, District 6.
Thank you both. When you go tomorrow or share with your friends the video of what we all watched tonight, there's a Donate Now button on our website that we would appreciate, and it's tax deductible. Getting close to the end of the year. Ron and Sherri, come on. Our video lady says it might be up tonight. She doesn't want to promise that, and I know Tim O'Hara wants it up too. I understand. I think if you talk to the videographer, she can probably get you a copy of it for the paper. Yeah. Are we ready, everyone? Very bright. Well, I think we could call this the main event. We've heard a little bit about this, and Joyce is here, our supervisor of elections.
Yes, Joyce.
Yeah. She decided not to run, which left an open seat, and here we are tonight. So, Mandy, you're going to start off. We're a little over time, but let's see how this goes, and we will go. Mandy.
This question is for Sherri, and it's one of the member-submitted questions from the hometown. Sherri, the governor has appointed a state attorney from another district to determine whether the chairman and/or you committed a third-degree felony as treasurer of the Monroe County Republican Executive Committee in connection with the $20,000 disbursement to you for your political campaign and endorsement. Were you aware at the time that the endorsement was granted and the $20,000 was awarded that was awarded, and the endorsement was made by a vote of 20 to 18, that you did not have the required 60% or 2/3 of those present and voting at the meeting?
That's a long question, right? So, I want to tell all of you this. First, I have never received anything officially. Isn't that amazing? That there's things out all over the internet, text messages, voicemails, you name it, and not one official document to Sherri Hodies. Isn't it amazing that right before the vote by mail ballots dropped, all of this came out? When it happened back in April. Second, and let me be very clear, there are no charges filed. I have the paperwork here with me today. If you'd like to meet me after, I'd love to share it with you. That is what real transparency is about. That is what real truth is about. These allegations are meritless and will be dismissed in due time, I'm sure. So, your question is about the $20,000 contribution.
Yes, whether you were aware that the endorsement did not get the required 60% or 2/3 vote.
During the meeting in April 20th, I walked out of the room. When I walked back in, there was a lot of discussion going on. And the 20 people that did want me to receive the endorsement and the contribution, they were upset. These contributions and endorsement mostly goes by Robert's Rules of Order. They felt like it was correct and I should receive the money. But yet there was 18 to the state Republican Party of Florida, and that is exactly what our chair did. She took it to the state for them to help in making this decision.
That's pretty much time, is it? Answers the question. We got right to it, so.
Okay.
Yep. I'm ready.
Joe,
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
you don't get a follow-up after that.
Okay, this is for Ron. Hello, Ron.
Hey, Joe.
You have spent a lot of time working at the polls and with Joyce in the elections office. Typically, when you're looking for a new job, you're kind of looking over the shoulders of the person you're going to replace and figuring out how you'd do it better or how you would be different about it. What sorts of ideas have you picked up on that you would change?
Well, I wasn't really looking over Joyce's shoulder. When she announced on the radio 2.5 years ago that she was not seeking re-election, she said publicly that anyone that wanted to run for a position should first be an election worker. And so I took her up on that. I've signed up for the 2022 primary and general elections. I did all the training sessions. I did early voting and vote by mail. I worked at the polls election day, worked very closely with Joyce and her staff. And I learned a lot because I've been a candidate and I know how to campaign. I had not run elections. And it's a totally different thing. So, and I'm looking over Joyce's shoulder, you learn a lot. She's been there 40 years, 12 as supervisor. So she runs that office like a champ. She's called Mama Bear for a reason because she protects your right to vote. And she has done a great job. I'm very proud to have her endorsement because to me, she's the gold standard and I want to keep it. So as far as any changes, you always want to keep up with technology, for example, but I don't see anything at this point that would be major that I'd want to change.
Thank you, Ron.
This one is for Sherri, but it is the same, along the same lines as for Ron. If you were elected, what would you do as your first 3 priorities in that office? And I have a follow-up.
It's like 4 questions if you do with the follow-up. Let's go ahead. First 3 priorities, yes.
Okay, my first 3 priorities are, the first thing that I'm going to do is get all of the employees together, poll workers, poll watchers. We may not be able to do this all at the same time, but I'm going to talk to them about status quo. Status quo is not the way that I'm going to go. There are always ways to better your processes and your procedures, your job responsibilities in any job that you do. I found that a long time ago when I worked at Honda for over 27 years. There's always things you can improve on. And the experts are those that have been working in that office. So I'll get them all together to talk to them about what we need to do next. What is our first steps that they see in their minds? They're the experts. The second thing is I am going to do an audit. There is no way in this county that I want to take over without doing an audit. Audits are very important. I'm a very good auditor. I did this at Honda of America, and I found fraud and corruption. Not that I'll find anything here, but I'm very good at my job as an auditor. I will also ask for an external auditor, anyone that isn't connected down here, to really look at this and make sure that we're good to go. The third thing is I'm going to look at all the voter rolls. We need to make sure that they're clean. I'm not saying they're not. I've never worked for or with this office, but voter rolls are important, and you're hearing that more and more out there in the news. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to help clean up any voter rolls.
First three.
Well, the first one would be just to continue what Joyce has been doing, because there's going to be a lot of follow-up from the election. You want to investigate any complaints, for example. There's some people out there that have come down to Key West and alleged various conspiracies, for example. They wondered why there were so many people with no addresses at Precinct 5, the courthouse. It turned out they were active military serving overseas, and I guess at a certain fundraiser raised that as a question. So certainly, after an election, you go through, you say, all right, any problems? Let's address them. Then meet with the staff. She has excellent staff. It's hard to believe that Joyce Griffin full-time staff has like 9 people, from Key West to Key Largo. The rest are volunteers like I did. And so certainly, congratulations to our staff there, because they do an excellent job. And the third thing I would do would be to go out in the community. I did that when I was your legislator. When I would come back from session, I'd go out and say, give me your thoughts of what we did, any improvements you think we should do. So I would go out in the community. I've been campaigning up and down the Keys. I'll just keep doing it. I'll just hopefully do it in a different capacity.
Great. You actually both gave 3 concise answers. I love it. Linda, do you have a thought? Yes, you have a thought.
I do. Ron, you have taken the poll training. You went through that. At the first forum, Sherri, I asked you if you had taken the poll training, which you had not. Since then, have you signed up for the upcoming poll training?
I don't believe that I should sign up for the poll training because I'm a candidate. So what I've done is I have went through everything that's online. I've looked at all of the, Joyce does a good job actually posting poll watching and other things online. I've went through all of those. I've got the date stamped of what time that I did all of that. But one thing that people don't understand is it's not just about working for Joyce as a poll worker or volunteering as a poll watcher. I'm a precinct committee woman for almost 8 years now. I get the people to the polls. I call the people in my precinct. I worked hard. I always work hard to get them out there, to hold out signs that, it's voting day today. I do a lot of social media with my team to make sure that we get these people to the polls.
Kim.
Okay, this was also submitted by a member of Hometown. It says that in a Key Citizen December 2023 article, Sherri, you were quoted as saying, "I have utmost faith in Joyce Griffin, and I believe the votes were counted accurately and fairly in Florida. We did not see the same issues that we saw in states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. Do you believe Joe Biden was elected president?"
I just love these questions. That's a very good question, actually. So, and thank you for asking it. There are a lot of news media out there of these different states that have had these issues. I don't know if everything was done correctly. I didn't work for or with those offices. But I will tell you what I told my children. President Joe Biden is in office, period. I am not an election denier, never have been. It's not out there anywhere, and I never will be. I had to be the leader in my family to let my children know that Trump lost. It's a big L. He lost. Biden won. That's a big W. If Trump wants to win, do it bigger, better, and more. That's it. The person that's sitting in that White House is President Joe Biden. And that's what I believe, because we have to keep the drama down. We have to keep things to where they need to be. Now, I do remember doing that, and I still feel the same way, that there are states out there that feel differently. How am I to say, how is anyone to say that those people were wrong? I don't know, I didn't work there. But I do know that as a mother, as a daughter-in-law, and as a wife, we have to move on. President Joe Biden is our president.
There's no reason.
Actually, there is a reason.
He didn't call you out in any way. So, okay, so Mandy. But we should give Ron some questions. I got a feeling he will probably address it.
Ron, in my 26 years as a Key West resident, this is the most contentious, certainly the most contentious supervisor of elections race I have ever covered or experienced. To what do you attribute that, and how can you cross the partisan divide or bridge the partisan divide in this county in a position if elected as supervisor of elections?
Well, number one, I do agree it's the most contentious supervisor elections race because the last one I remember was 12 years ago and it wasn't that contentious. I'm not sure, and I was going to ask that because a lot of you have said, did you see these mail pieces? And I said, well, I got this one that shows a picture of me and Marco Rubio, so I know that you are a Democrat because it tags me. I have this one that shows with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, so I know you're Republican. The interesting thing is both from the same party, same PAC, Conservative Family Alliance. So they both said the same thing, depending if you're Democrat or Republican. This is funded by a person named Cheryl Meads, a former Islamorada councilman who lives in Hope Sound, multimillionaire, who just coincidentally is Sherri Hodies' biggest contributor. I'm sure that's just a coincidence, and so I won't ascribe anything to that. I did tell Sherri before tonight, I texted her and said, just so you know, Cheryl Meads is the one behind this, and I can document that. Why would the Republican Party put $30,000 into this race? Why would Cheryl Meads put $30,000 into these false mailings? It's not because Sherri's better qualified. I've worked for the elections office, she didn't. I'm an attorney, does election laws. She has a paralegal certificate. So if it's not on qualifications, maybe it's because they want somebody there that they can control. That's all I can think of. I'm bipartisan. When you look at my, thank you, Jessica. When you look at at my mail piece, I have endorsements bipartisan. Sheriff Ramsey, Republican. Joyce Griffin, Democrat. Craig Cates, Republican. I believe in bipartisanship, and I think that's important to have a supervisor of elections that'll be fair and impartial, regardless of your party affiliation.
Ron, you basically set a record for calling out your opponents with Sherri. You get to respond to the various...
What was that, 3 times you said my name? Okay, here. All right, these do not say paid for by Sherri Hodies. Make sure you understand the political things that are going on right now. I will give it back to you. Believe me, I don't want it. He is right. It is paid for the alliance, the PAC that he's talking about. And you know what I did? Because I am full of integrity. Here's what I did. What I did is I called US 1 Radio. Check it out, Joe. I called US 1 Radio and I said, hey, I don't like this radio ad about LGBTQ concerning my opponent. Take it down, period. Take it down. I do not like dirty campaigns. I am not into dirty politics. Didn't have to do it in the primary, not gonna do it now. You know what they told me? They have First Amendment rights. Talk to them. I talked to them. They said no. Actually, she hung up on me. She is not my biggest contributor, and she hung up on me. She has First Amendment rights and she will not listen to me. So I called my attorney, who told me I have no recourse. So I'm sorry that these things are going on about you. Some people say to me, well, we don't like him, so that's what we're doing. Well, I'm tired of being used as a ping pong ball going back and forth, to be honest with you. Because that's what exactly happens when things get dirty. That's why I don't do anything dirty. Make sure you look at who it comes from. It will never, never say paid for by Sherri Hodies if it is a negative ad. Never.
Thanks, Sherri. Ron, she didn't call you out.
I'm sorry, just be clear, the thing she was...
Ron, no.
It's
Ron.
my mail piece, not the... So she's holding up my mail piece.
Ron, no. He didn't do it. She...
Go ahead.
There will be plenty of other times. She did not call him out.
Good job, Ty.
Jill?
Everyone's saying, she did say. Just saying, Todd.
Who's next? Joe?
Okay, all right.
No, you're not.
I've never counted a vote in my life. I'm sure there's a lot more to it than I realize. But I have worked the election night for US 1 Radio 2 years, and apparently that's over now. But regardless, both times that I worked the elections, there were issues. 2 years ago, one of the precincts couldn't get the results to us. And Ron, you were sitting there with me, and we waited and waited and waited and talked to everybody who had lips in the room, killing time, and they had to drive the results to Key West. In the primary earlier this year, there was a problem. That wasn't a local problem, it was a statewide problem. I realized that. But it seems to me that points out the need for some kind of redundancy to make sure we do this right. Because we only do it every 2 years, and it's so important that we get it and we get it done right. And people want to hear their votes counted. Would you be in favor of looking at some sort of redundant system, a backup plan, whatever you want to call it, to make sure people can hear their votes counted in a reasonable amount of time?
Well, first off, I believe that Joyce and her staff do an excellent job. The issues that you brought up, one is because Joyce does not transmit results over cell phone lines. For election security, it's done by landlines. And one of the problems was that when the landline was out. And I respect the fact that she does not want to be able to be hacked and have election results. So she is very secure in how she handles election results. And if they have to drive them from a precinct to headquarters, great. I'll wait an extra half an hour to make sure my votes are not hacked.
Me too.
And so that's the reason why sometimes there are delays. Now, having run for legislature where half my district was Monroe County and half was Dade County, I remember one election where they declared me the winner. I said, wait a minute, all of Monroe County has been reported. Not one precinct in Dade had reported. So when you want to compare Monroe County and Dade County, there's no comparison. Joyce does a wonderful job. As far as election security, she is paranoid. Somebody called her one time and said they're from the FBI or somebody, and they want to talk about security, she hung up on them. Because Joyce doesn't talk on the phone. You want to go see her, you go see her in person.
Thank you, Rob. Linda? Oh, do you want to share it? Okay. But use the mic. Use the mic, Joe. So
I'm sorry. Would you be in favor of doing some kind of redundancy program to make sure if something goes wrong, we can get the results?
So the Department of Florida, the SOEs, got together and they actually put in a claim, I guess, an allegation of what happened during the primary and how can we do this better. So I would definitely be in favor of some kind of a plan. I'm sure Joyce has done everything that she's been able to do, but let's get together with the other SOEs in the states. I've called over half of them when I began to run because I felt like that's what I should do, and that's what you guys should expect me to do, to understand the job better, to understand what the policy and procedures are. And I think that it is a very good idea to try to put a plan together. We never know what's gonna happen. And like I said, I'm sure Joyce and her office has done everything they can, but let's look at things further. Let's push to find better ideas. And a lot of that could come from our experts that are working there right now, and a lot of that can come from partnering with the other SOEs in the state.
Good. Thank you, Sherri. So Linda, then Kim, we're running out of time here.
I'm assuming when we're talking about redundancies, you all are talking about digital redundancy, because we have paper ballots, big stacks of paper ballots that are the total fallback if things don't work digitally. So I'm not sure what else.
I think that's a question for Joe.
Okay,
But
well, I'm
let's
sorry,
go, let's get to
but
the,
they both talked
let's get
about,
to the candidates.
They both talked about the need for redundancy. So, all right, here's a question that has nothing to do with elections, has everything to do with you as candidates. Will you vote yes on Amendment 3 and yes on Amendment 4? We were told we can ask all of them any question.
Since Jill is part of our panel now,
I am.
Well, she shouldn't be.
We've actually discussed this a lot at Hometown of the amendments, and we have just as many people that want to know how candidates are going to vote on bigger issues than we don't. So we will allow it. It's a fair, and you don't have to answer if you don't want. So that's that.
Thank you.
So Sherri, go ahead.
So how many people here have served our country in the military? Raise your hands. Thank you for your service. You know what you guys did? You guys gave me the right not to answer that question. Because I was raised by my wonderful parents to keep your vote personal. I don't have to tell you who I'm going to vote for or what I'm going to vote for or against. That's not even fair to put any of us in that position, because in America, you don't have to tell anybody what you're going to vote for, period.
Thank you, Sherri. Ron?
Well, I don't have to tell you either, but I will. I've looked at the amendments because I believe in researching these things. Amendment 3 is the recreational marijuana amendment. I support it because if you can drink alcohol, you should be able to smoke marijuana if that's what the people want. It takes a 60% vote, by the way. So if 60% of people want to pass this, good for them. I don't care. I don't smoke, but if you want to smoke, go for it. Second one is on the abortion amendment. And this is relevant because of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, and it's become an issue. It never was an issue. The entire 14 years I served in Florida legislature, it was never an issue. It tried to be an issue, but it never was. Now it is. I believe there's some really bad legislation being passed. You heard earlier from our representative, Jim Mooney. He's a Republican. He opposed the 6 weeks abortion ban. It's extreme. And that's the problem. If you don't have this protection in the state constitution, you will have some of these extreme measures passed by the legislature, and I was one, and they can do that. So I'm for number 3, and I'm for number 4. Yes.
Kim, last question.
Okay, this one is for Ron. How can your former state representative experience help with this position?
Well, one way is that the reason why Joyce, when she was on my show, said that she was not running, because those stupid legislators kept passing dumb laws. I'm paraphrasing Joyce, but basically what she was saying was, and I agreed, that they were passing laws to make it harder to vote. And another example, before you could sign up for vote by mail for 2 election cycles, 4 years. They changed it for some reason to only every cycle. So a lot of people out there that thought they signed up for vote by mail, they didn't. They didn't get their ballot. Why? Why are they making it harder to vote? So I guess I answer the question, I believe as a former legislator, if they do something stupid, I'll go to Tallahassee and say, listen, I used to be one of you guys, and here's the reason why that's wrong. Here's why it's making it harder for people to vote. I'm all for election security. Because somebody said, I think his name was Joe Moore, asked me if I believed in non-citizens voting. I said, absolutely not. The current law says only citizens can vote. I support the current law. I do not support non-citizens being able to vote. It's that kind of thing. So make it real clear that I believe in citizens voting. Make it if you're entitled to vote, make it easy to vote. If you're not entitled to vote and you try to do it, arrest you.
Okay. Let's do one more round. Closing statements. Girls? Closing statements. You're acting like girls, so. Ron, start, and Sherri, and remember, if you call each other out, we're never gonna go home. So.
Me?
Yes, Ron.
Well, I am Ron Saunders, running for supervisor elections. I was born and raised here in the Keys, represented you for 14 years in the state legislature. I have a good record. I'm not gonna get into that. I want to talk about somebody else's record, and that's Joyce Griffin. She's done an excellent job there, and she endorsed me, and I want to take my time to read the letter, or at least part of it. I have interacted with both candidates running for my job, and I believe that Ron Saunders has the integrity, qualifications, and experience needed for the position. And I won't go into others, but it says, Ron Saunders is an attorney who understands election law. For these reasons, I am personally endorsing Ron Saunders for Monroe County Supervisor elections. I think it says a lot when the current supervisor, who has never endorsed before in her entire 40-year career, endorsed me. I think it's because she's concerned. She's concerned about what may happen to that office. I believe in being impartial and fair. I have a lot of support on both sides of the aisle. Commissioner Cates is here tonight. I thank him for his endorsement. Sheriff Rick Ramsey, obviously Joyce is a Democrat. And that's important to know that when you get elected, you represent everybody. When I was your state legislator and someone called my office, I just said, well, before we help you, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? No. When you're elected, you represent everybody, regardless of party affiliation. And I see too much extreme partisanship out there. And once again, when you get things like this in the mail, you know, if you're a Democrat, you get this one, a Republican, you get this one. These are, and she might say that she has nothing to do with it, I believe her, but it is a fact that her biggest contributor is the one sending these out. So she may not know it, I give her the credit for saying that, but it's true. Cheryl Meads is her biggest contributor through herself and her corporations. I can prove it. And these kind of things are disgusting. They do not belong in Monroe County politics.
So we're supposed to do a closing statement, so that's what I'll do. I am Sherri Hodies, and I am your candidate for Supervisor of Elections. I, again, did not send out any of that, I'm just going to say crap, because that's what it is. I don't agree with it, didn't send it out. I will just rebuttal for 1 second here. Cheryl Meads is not my biggest contributor. Actually, the Republican Party of Monroe County is. And my family is. Thank you. I want you guys to know how honest and how transparent I am. I went to US 1 Radio to ask them to stop this. That's transparency. I'm telling you all of that. That's integrity. Integrity is when you have that integrity when no one is even looking. That's Sherri Hodies. I went to the League of Women Voters, and our current Supervisor of Elections said, here's what I want. I want someone that can say no. Oh, I know how to say no. You just heard it tonight. No, I will not answer that question. I will not answer that question because I don't have to. And that also means that I'll make sure that I secure your vote, and I won't know how you guys vote either. Number 2, Joyce Griffin said, we need somebody that's a hard worker. I have walked over 13,000 homes since December. 13,000, and I will not stop. And when I'm at those homes, that is Democrats, NPAs, Independents, Republicans. And the first 3 have told me many times they are voting for me. I may not have an endorsement from Joyce Griffin, but I will be impartial, of course. And I have voters that are Democrats that are going to vote for me. I know 2 are going to vote for me, my husband and my mother-in-law. I know those Democrats are voting for me. And I'll wrap it up. And so if you want someone that has high integrity, transparency, that will work her tail off, then you know who to vote for. Sherri Hodies on November 5th.
Okay, thank you both. Thank all of you. Election day's coming. Give to hometown, please. Hi, Jill.